what is your stance on removing theist materials? Like the little pamphlets that you sometimes find in the Watchtower sort of books. How do you feel when you find those things in public? Just a background on how I came to this question. I live in New York, obviously, and sometimes you find little booklets in the train, spread throughout and left on seats, and they're eye-catching. They're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And we, as atheists, we kind of understand that, hey, none of this, if someone finds this, it could be helpful to them, but it could also be very harmful. And at first I was equating it in my head to, finding poison and, giving it to, and just leaving it alone. And I understand it's not that dramatic. So I've kind of scaled it down to finding spoiled milk in your fridge. And, you could either put it back and say, hey, that's somebody else's problem. Maybe someone will drink it, maybe not. Or you can, do the right thing and just get rid of it because it's not useful to anyone anymore. And I don't advocate, smacking pamphlets out of people's hands or anything like that. But, if you're passively by yourself and you find, a bushel of these pamphlets, wouldn't it be best kind of just to toss them in the trash?
Personally, I just leave them alone. If it's a public place that's kind of an open forum where anyone can leave stuff out, I think I have no problem with equal access, and if they want to put their stuff there, and if the atheist community of Austin puts stuff out, and it's not closed to anybody, I would leave it alone. And if somebody's interested, they can pick it up, and if not, they don't have to pick it up.
Yeah, to me. When you consider an ethical question, you have to include thinking about the magnitude of good or harm that it does. And to me, I agree with you that probably it's a slight more amount of harm than good. And so if you want to pick that up and throw it in the trash, then good on you. But for me, it's almost not worth the effort because the amount of change that action will cause is almost so trivial. Like, have you read those pamphlets? They're ridiculous. And I feel like anybody who's going to pick up one of these pamphlets from like Jack Chick or something, and then that's going to be the thing that pushes them over and dumps them in some sort of dogmatic mindset, like they were pretty close to gone anyway. And so where I would put my effort is in having real conversations with people, and pushing back a little bit and educating people to change their minds. I guess throwing away a pamphlet that maybe somebody else would have read or maybe not, very little actual change in the grand scheme of things.
I agree. But I've been listening to the show for years now, and we've heard these anecdotal stories of how someone has been down on their luck at a particular time, and they happen across a piece of literature or some small suggestion that should warrant a little bit more investigation, but since they're already desperate, they go for it. What I worry about is, what if that's the case? I'd leave this on the seat, and someone who's feeling destitute comes along and finds it, and then that's their snare. And also a part of me is if I had any sort of atheist, let's say propaganda or whatever, or a pamphlet, theists wouldn't hesitate to toss that in the trash.
Sure.
I understand. I would try and be honorable and say, hey, to each their own. But we both know that would instantly be seen by no one and tossed away or marked up or something.
Well, and that's why I say, feel free to throw these things away if you want to. But people in general are really bad at assessing the bigger picture numerical impact of something as opposed to just an anecdote. Like you hear a preacher in the pulpit and he says oh yeah, I was rock bottom and then I found this Jack Chick pamphlet and it turned my life around. First of all, often those stories are bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, preachers have like books of stories that they can read that didn't even necessarily happen to them. I've gotten this from people who have been involved, that you get a sermon book and it includes personal anecdotes and they encourage you to put your own spin on it. But whether it's true or not, the number of people that happens to is incredibly small. Again, speaking big picture. And, you know, I just Googled a Pew poll, which is already a few years out of date, but there's been every indication that for the last few decades, non-belief has been gradually on the rise. And so the idea that somebody could pick up a pamphlet and then just have their mind completely changed isn't something that keeps me up at night.
Well, and it strikes me as a little paternalistic, too. It's like I'm going to decide what you are allowed to come across in the subway car or whatever. And so I think people can decide for themselves. And yeah, there may be somebody who's easily manipulated, who might find it and be easily manipulated, but they're easily manipulated anyway.
Right.
So I err on the side of, if it's an error, on the side of more free speech and not less. So.
Okay, that makes sense. And and I agree. When that did happen, it was months ago. I didn't, go around and toss them. The one I was reading, I threw away. But I figured, hey, it's, to each their own. And I thought about it for a while. And like I said, it's spoiled milk. It's not going to kill anyone. I don't feel like I have anyone's life in my hand. It's their choice. But that was my question. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. And, I would just say, if you want to make a bigger impact as an atheist, then you can just start by being an out atheist, because throwing away a pamphlet is not going to have nearly as much impact on people's lives as paying attention to opportunities that come up and just having open, friendly conversations like we try to have on this show in your day-to-day life.
I'm very inspired by the show. I like to look at things from a critical thinking point, and I had my opinion on it already, but I just wanted to see if my thought processes synced up with anyone else. To kind of be like, okay, yeah, this makes sense, sort of deal.
All right. Well, thanks for calling.
Thanks, Ken.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah, that's a good distinction to make if somebody's life depends on it. Like if I saw a used syringe laying on, I might carefully pick that up and throw it away because it could really be, really hurt somebody. But
sure.
A pamphlet, I don't think is really going to hurt somebody.
I mean, I can see his point that you could make the case that it could, with some unusual set of circumstances, cause a bad turn in their life, but it just doesn't seem that likely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I see one of those and I pick it up and read it because they're funny.
Right.